Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Hugh Freeze, the Auburn Tigers, wrapping up their spring game. Want to hop on and talk about some of the big takeaways that we had from this spring game. And Dill, I'll start with this. Yes, we are very excited for Auburn in 2024. If you're an Auburn Tigers fan, you have to be so excited about what the future holds for this program. You talk about the young talent that just looked a little bit different than what we've seen from the past. Obviously, headlined by Cam Coleman, but I point to guys like Jamonte Waller, Amaris Williams, DJ Barber, the young talent that's getting infused into this roster. You're not only going to be good in 2024, this is a team that has such a bright future. You brought in Hugh Freeze to up Auburn's recruiting. You're seeing that talent acquisition and the domination that Auburn has shown on the recruiting trail manifest to this Auburn roster. That's what had me most fired up. Going to get into what we saw from both the offense and the defense. Extremely fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Auburn Tiger fans. Whether we're breaking down spring practice, talking about this program on the recruiting trail, the amount of support y'all continue to show truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear some of your big takeaways in the comment section. Dill, I'm going to give you the tee box, and let's start on the offensive side of the football. I think that's where a lot of the excitement for Auburn fans was kind of in place. How do we think this Auburn offense looked this afternoon?
Yeah, I think the big takeaway is the wide receiver play and the pass catcher unit is going to be at a far higher level than what they had last year. And frankly, I know that Peyton Thorne took his share of the beating for some of Auburn's struggles on offense. I mean, their wide receivers weren't good enough. I don't think they made a ton of big plays. I mean, you look, Cam Coleman looks like a guy who's going to be day one, very much a threat to make any, like whenever he's on the field. I mean, he's a touchdown waiting to happen. Thought Camden Brown played the way you want to see him play, running good routes, making plays after the catch. And same thing with Robert Lewis, who again, you kind of bring him in. You need a guy who's a little more steady, runs routes the right way, and can make those plays in like that short intermediate range. Looked really good from him. I just think your wide receiver talent looks far better than what you had. And you wouldn't even get to see some of the other young freshmen that much.
It looked different. That's like the guys on the field look just different. Obviously, starting with Cam Coleman. Dill, what I'm most excited about with Cam Coleman is something that we talked about so much during the 2023 season is Auburn didn't have, a wide receiver that could really win vertically and threaten defenses in that deeper third. You have your guy in Cam Coleman. Not only is he just physically, he's ready to play as a true freshman. That guy looked extremely special, but I think that's going to open up this Auburn offense. And then you sprinkle in guys like Jay Fair, who we know can ball. Robert Lewis coming in through the transfer portal. He looked phenomenal. Camden Brown, I thought, looked really good as well. Like you said, this wide receiver room, this pass catcher unit looks a little bit different, and I think that's massive for this Auburn offense. Heading into 2024 now, getting into the quarterback play, my biggest takeaway from the quarterback play is that Peyton Thorne just looked a little bit more comfortable, right? They never seem to have kind of found a rhythm and stayed in that rhythm during that 2023 season. There are a lot of reasons why you can have that, right? One, Hugh Freeze probably not having as much fingerprints on that offense as you wanted to see. I think secondly, you noted it, the pass catching unit just wasn't where it needed to be. And then Peyton Thorne, I mean, he got in the summer. He was not here during spring practice last year. My biggest takeaway for a guy like Peyton Thorne was the ball was coming out quick. He looked in more command of this offense, and it certainly helps when you have wide receivers that actually can go down the field and make plays for you. I mean, I get it. I think a lot of people are critical of Peyton Thorne, and yeah, at times rightfully so. He looked much more comfortable in this offense, and that's massive for this Auburn team heading into 2024.
And frankly, you just expect that because we talked about him when he came over from Michigan State. He's not a guy you want necessarily being the guy who, like, everything on his shoulder. You don't want him to be Cam Newton. Cam Newton was like a type of guy who could put the whole team on his back. That's just not Peyton Thorne's game. I don't think he'll ever have that. I mean, now they have a real team around him. I think they have the wide receivers they need. And if he's got that, I think you're very comfortable with what he can do in terms of facilitating the offense, sprinkling in some plays with his legs. I mean, he's a solid quarterback. I just don't think he was in the environment last year.
We said it coming in, and we said it actually earlier this week too. Peyton Thorne, I mean, threw for over 3,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, won 11 games for a Michigan State team when he had talent around him. Last year just didn't have that talent. I think this year certainly does. I think Peyton Thorne showed that he can be a quarterback that can win you some football games. Also want to talk about Hank Brown. This is a guy that, I mean, beautiful deep ball. And we kind of said that last year when you saw him in the bowl game, looked in command, was pushing the ball down the field. I think for Auburn fans, you got two quarterbacks that you feel good and you feel like you can win a lot of football games with, whether it be Peyton Thorne, whether it be Hank Brown. Holden Garner, probably just on his way out. I would be surprised if he doesn't hit the portal. And then commenting on Walker White real quick, he looks a little bit different in terms of how that football comes out of his hands. Probably not going to be the guy in 2024. But again, you talk about the bright future that this Auburn program has. I think it's in Walker White's hands, and I think they got a real one in him as well.
Yeah, and that'll be the big thing. Again, I mean, Walker White, like, there's always that part of me as a fan that wants to see the true freshman play. But I think this year, you're probably right. He's probably not going to be the guy at the end of the day. But, I mean, you are, like, the talent is there. I mean, you can see it, obviously, in the spring game. I mean, him, Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Bryce Kane, like, you have a really interesting offense going forward, I think, for Auburn that you're really excited about.
Playmakers. I mean, we said this. You give Hugh Freeze a lot of these pieces, he's going to start to cook on the offensive side of the football, and I think Auburn fans are excited about that. The running back room, we don't need to touch on that much. It's going to be a strength of this unit. I don't think they particularly ran the football all that great today. Really I think the offensive line, I mean, solid. It's kind of hard to evaluate during spring football on the up front on the offensive line. Running back room, again, Hugh Freeze was even critical of it at times. I don't think any Auburn fans have any question marks about what the running back room is going to look like in 2024. Now, Dill, you go to the defensive side of the football, and a lot of it was good on good, right? And that's how you want your spring games to look. Some of the throws that were getting complete down the field, it wasn't because of bad coverage in the back end. It was good on good throws, good catches. I want to start up front. Keldrick Falk looks to be a guy that's going to take that jump and be one of the premier guys on the defensive line. And then Jalen McLeod, Dill, he has so much juice off the edge. I'm just going to lump him up in that defensive line. He's going to be, in my mind, one of the more elite pass rushers in the SEC this year. My biggest takeaway, though, because he kind of knew Keldrick Falk and Jalen McLeod are kind of dudes, the true freshmen look like they can play early. And that was one of the questions that we had coming in was, guys like Amaris Williams, Malik Blockton, Jamonta Waller, all guys that we love coming out of high school. Will they be able to come in and immediately provide depth and good reps for this Auburn defense? I think we got our answer. Those guys do not look like freshmen. I think that's massive for this Auburn team heading into 2024, that they have that really good depth in the trenches going into 2024.
And you can just tell by the way when they make contact with offensive linemen, when they engage, I mean, they're shocking. They're like, they look physically how you want to see it. When they put their hands on them, it looks like they're a handful to deal with, especially Amaris Williams. I thought he looked like, you didn't see maybe a ton of reps, but like enough what you saw, like you're like, ooh, I really like what he has. He looks physically ready. I think you said he looked a little bit like Ruben Bain from Miami, a little bit shorter, but really strong, really powerful. I mean, he'll be an interesting guy to see. And frankly, they needed that because you look, those two guys at the top in their edge or their edge room with Jalen McLeod and Keldrick Falk, you really like. I think you probably had some questions about what they were going to do behind them. I mean, those two guys look like they're going to give them a lot of really good snaps.
And I thought even the inside of the defensive line, a position that we were kind of concerned about, they held their own as well. I thought you saw some flashes from guys like Gage Keys. And I mean, I'll just bang the table one more time for Amaris Williams. The long-time Auburn fans know how I feel about him. You're looking at an absolute stud. He is going to be very good, not only year one, over the next couple of years. Going to the linebacker room, you kind of know what you have with guys like Eugene Asante, Austin Keys, DJ Barber. Like, you see him diagnosing, playing downhill, playing with the physicality that's kind of rare from freshmen at that linebacker position. Again, it kind of goes into the conversation where you feel pretty good about that room heading into 2024, but man, the future of that position, that is looking very bright for Auburn as well.
I mean, that's going to be an extremely competitive room. I mean, I think you kind of thought like you had your two guys out there with Asante and Keys. It's going to be hard to keep DJ Barber off the field. I think it's going to be hard to keep Dorian Mousy off the field. I thought he played really good football too. I mean, that's four guys you just kind of look, just from today, you're like, oh, I think all four of those guys you'd be really comfortable with having out there. I mean, again, I do think I thought Austin Keys looked awesome, so I don't want to like make it seem like I don't think he belongs there. Austin Keys played great, but I mean, I feel like those two guys are going to work their way in and play at times. thought they both played really well.
Exactly how you want a program to look heading into fall camp, where you have kind of your veteran returning guys, but you have some newcomers that are really going to add some competition. You look at some of the top programs and what the blueprint is: competitive competition, everyone getting pushed for their starting spot. They're going to have that in the linebacker room. You look at the back end, obviously a position room where you had to replace a lot. I think you got really good cornerbacks in Kayan Lee, in Keontae Scott, Jaron Thompson, Charles Kelly, DJ Durkin. They're going to get to work with this kid. Like, he's going to get used in so many different ways. You saw him coming off the edge for a sack during the spring game. I think you got some really good boundary cornerbacks, and then I think you got a lot of versatility in that nickel and safety room to use these guys in a lot of different ways. And again, I trust DJ Durkin and Charles Kelly to really make that happen for this Auburn secondary.
And you just gotta love like what you saw from the sophomores and true juniors, like those type. Again, going back, those younger guys. Kayan Lee looks like he's going to be really. I mean, just being so comfortable with the ball in the air, not really getting rattled at all. Antonio Kite looked really good, and for even like guys like Terrence Love, I mean, bigger physical safety, making some plays in the box, doing a good job working on tight ends. Again, at the end of the day, for Auburn, I mean, is this a national championship team in 2024? I mean, I don't know that they're a favorite, obviously, but you just kind of look at what the guys look like behind. Those younger guys, they're the ones who physically look the way you want them to look as you start to think of the future and what, like, bringing Auburn back to where you want them to be in terms of, like, being a year in and year out contender. That's what you're looking at. You just see the young guys. They're going to be the leaders of this team this year, frankly, I think. And that's kind of where you want it when you're Auburn, especially as you kind of turning over the Gus Malzahn.
The minute Hugh Freeze,
I should say Brian
Harsin, the minute Hugh Freeze took over this Auburn program, you knew the talent acquisition was going to go in the right direction. But how that game works, you don't see it immediately, right? You knew Hugh Freeze wasn't going to be able to turn this Auburn team where Brian Harsin left it in an absolute dumpster fire and turn it around into a national title contender in year one. But today you saw that talent acquisition, it's starting to pay off. And it's going to pay off not only in 2024, but it's going to pay off over the next couple of years. That's my biggest takeaway from the spring game. Going into fall camp, really excited about this program. Though we talked about it, kind of a gettable schedule, right? Should go 4-0, hosting Oklahoma, to go 5-0. Fire me up for that game. I'm very excited about this program. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, all the support from the Auburn fans truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.